very welcome to the latest Radio Centre Ireland webinar. This time the subject matter is leveraging the power of sound. And I do feel that brands sometimes have an emphasis on the visual elements, and it's often audio that is more potent at kickstarting memories, providing saliency, and also delivering distinctiveness. So I think it's, audio it's become hugely important. And with that, it's a medium that's very unusual. It's kind of an unusual medium in the sense that it has a very, very captive audience. So it gives brands time to craft their message, if they can do that in a powerful way. So that's really what this morning is about, to really discuss about how brands can leverage the power of sound. And I think the medium is well known as a medium that is used to activate and is used by retailers a lot. But I think there's real opportunity for brands to use the medium to drive more long-term brand growth. There's actually a study done in the UK. It looked at 1,400 campaigns over 12 years. And the results showed that brands that used radio consistently delivered more or stronger brand building metrics that brand compared to brands that didn't use audio. When you look at the biggest CPG brand in the world, Procter & Gamble, they made a big strategic decision in the US about 3 or 4 years ago to really invest strongly in audio and radio in particular. And so much so that in the last 2 years, Procter & Gamble are the largest spender of radio in the US. And they're making a strategic decision to do that because they see the power of the medium. So I think in an over-communicated world, advertisers can really harness the power of sound. So to discuss this morning, we have two fantastic speakers, and I'm really delighted to have both Ralph van Dyck and Paul Dervan here. We'll hear from Ralph in a little while. Ralph is a world authority on audio. He's actually the most awarded writer and director of audio. He's won many Cannes awards, and in fact, his company Eardrum are behind many of the big global awards in the audio space. But before we hear from Ralph, we're going to hear from Paul Dervan. I think most of you will know Paul. For people who don't know Paul is an author of One with Foxes. He also is currently the CMO of the National Lottery and also Marketeer of the Year in Ireland this year. But Paul is soon to be moving on to take up a new global role in Miro. So the National Lottery in Ireland's loss will definitely be Miro's gain. Paul is going to share some learnings on how to make wonderful audio and also share some insights on the effectiveness of his current National Lottery audio activity. So over to you, Paul.
Thanks, Kieran. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Hi, everybody. So thanks for having me on. I'm going to show one radio ad, and I'm going to talk about it and talk about some of the thinking behind it. What I would say is, in general, I think radio is really a really useful channel for a number of reasons, and I think it's probably underutilized a lot, and I certainly think we underutilize it a lot, and certainly that's kind of where I came from with this particular case. But we use an awful lot. What's particularly interesting is how good reach it has in the Irish context. It really, you can reach a lot of people very quickly with it, and I think it's kind of surprising. Some people don't realize that. I'm going to share my screen here, and hopefully that'll work. So give me a moment. Can you see that okay? Can people see that? Yeah, fine. Okay, so I'll try not to go too long, and I will keep it short enough. So what I would say is this: so we, at least in the lottery, we're pretty good at advertising in the sense that we apply a lot of discipline to it, and we take it seriously, and we do a lot of it, so we get to learn a lot. One of the ways that we try and get a sense of whether our advertising is potentially going to be liked is using a couple of research testing. And one of them is we use Red C. Another one we use is System1, which many people know, which is a really good It's a really good creative testing methodology if you're trying to get people to have any kind of emotional kind of response. So, and we do this, and I won't play this right here now, but if people want links to this, let me know. But this is what we do is we can track, how people respond to the advertising and on a second by second, and we get a sense of how highly it scores on a number of different dimensions. A lot of you might be familiar with this. What I would say is, in the last number of years, I've been to lottery almost 4 years, and whenever we make any kind of large investment in TV or video, we always do this testing, and we don't. Well, the test doesn't make the decision for us. We use it to help us understand whether what we're doing is going to be well received, and we tend to test final film as opposed to early stuff because it's hard to replicate some of the storyboards and things like that. But we do it for everything. We have a benchmark. We benchmark ourselves against the best in the world. For example, in 2021, I think it was, our combined kind of TV video advertising was in the top versus all the advertising in the UK. So we were just like a hair behind Cadbury's in terms of they were the best advertiser on System 1 for their combined work, and we just came in slightly under them. So as far as we're concerned, we were competing against the best in the UK and winning. And that's fine, and that's for TV and video. And I guess part of the reason for that is you invest a lot of money in making of TV video because you spend an awful lot on the media, and you it's hard to, if not well, there's a lot of, you got to roll back an awful lot. Now, we also put a lot of effort into once we thought we'd figured out how to do really good TV and video, we then tackled our out of home. We spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to do good, high impact out of home. And the same we did a lot of work on social media to figure out how within each context, how can you do well for each of these channels. But then it got to radio, and what we knew is this: we did an awful lot of radio, and sometimes it's really short radio ads, which is like a 10-second radio or 50-second radio ad, just telling people what the jackpot amount is. And that is what it is. It's information ads, and what we try and do is just make them as efficient and as distinctive as possible, and make sure the information is there. But we actually spent 18 months trying to make good radio ads that would help what we call win belief, which is get people excited or get people to feel something about the idea that they could win, in the sense of it could be you. And we really hadn't been successful for about 18 months. And when I mean successful is when I look at the tracking of it. So we look at a number of different metrics. We look at the radio ads themselves, and we do a System 1 occasionally for them. And they would come in and around like a 2-star, which is an average. But like, if you can imagine our TV video, we come in at very least at 3.5 star, sometimes 5 star. So we were much better at that. And so I guess the question was, could we do effective radio, and how would we do it? And there was a number of reasons that were probably stopping us. So hang on, if I can just go on to the next slide. Yeah. So what we set out to do then is, instead of making new radio ads every few weeks, we would set out to make one very good ad that we could run for months, in the same way that we approach some of our TV and video advertising. You make something, now there's other ads going on all the time, but make something that is really good, that won't get wear out, that would that you can invest, instead of investing media spend into a new radio ad every few weeks, we put proper media spend into, if we could make one that was really good. We really invested time in the writing of it. The other thing is this: we didn't place a condition on the length of the radio ad. Often when you start with, look, the most efficient radio ad will be 15 seconds, therefore let's work to that. What we did is we said, well, what does it require? And what we said to the creative team, very experienced creative team, is the idea, and we'll figure out if we need 40 seconds, we'll make it 40 seconds, and we'll do less frequency and things like that to pick up the cost. So I see a typo here, and like we studied the orthodoxies, so the kind of things you expect to see in radio ads, they often have similar sound effects. There's in terms of music, and you get what you call as radio acting. It's not proper acting. It's just made for radio, and it's not real acting. I mean, it's just rushed. There's never. I don't know anyone on listening to this here now. If you make radio ads, how often you bring a director in? And the answer is for us is almost never. We just try and figure it out without a director, but we'd never make an TV ad without a director. The thing is this: when we did this, we recorded it. We had a good idea. I'm going to play the radio ad in a moment. We had a good idea. We went to studio. We recorded it and did all those things we talked about in the first 4. It didn't work. It felt contrived. And we went back again, and actually we were trying to get kind of an authentic sound to it. And the creative director and the sound engineer, if anyone knows Lockie, they went down to one of the houses, their own houses, and filmed it in the house because they wanted to create this authentic sound and didn't feel like studio. So from a strategic perspective, if we figured this out, it was going to be really helpful for us because we wouldn't be rushed into this cycle of making short-term ads, and we could invest more into the time and effort and money into making one and potentially 2, but one really good ad. And then if we had confidence that it was working in terms of our System 1 metrics, we would play it on an ongoing basis. And that's what happened. So let me just play the radio ad, and I can show you some of the scores, and I'm happy to take questions on this. So I think this is going to play because we tried this already. The picture you're seeing is just because it's on YouTube, so ignore the picture. Let's just listen to the audio.
What would you do if you want?
Hello, National Lottery Claims.
Hi, how are you? I was told to ring this number to see how much I'd won in the lotto.
I can check that for you now.
Thank you so much.
Could be anything, couldn't it?
Yeah, we could away. Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Do you have any idea what you've actually won?
I have no idea.
Okay, well I can tell you, it's actually €1 million.
Since 2020, more than 100 lottery players in Ireland have won €1 million. The National Lottery. It could be you. Play responsibly. Play for fun.
Hopefully you could all hear that. I'm happy to talk about the creative idea and all that kind of stuff, but I leave that for the moment. I can take it in questions if anyone's interested. Let me just move on to the next slide. Let me flick between here. Okay. So this is probably the best chart to explain it to people, but most radio ads come in around a 2-star. So System 1 have a kind of a 5-star metric, and they've done some work that would suggest that if you get into each of these stars, you can correlate that with kind of market share growth, dependent on other factors such as kind of enough share of voice and media spend, as well as kind of pricing and things like that. But and I don't worry too much about those bits. But I do really believe in the sense that if you are trying to create memory structures and get noticed and embed something into people's memories, then using a emotion-led approach gives you a better bet. But you can see here anyway, the 2-star here is kind of is the average. And actually that's where most of our radio ads used to land, while our out of home was always outperforming, and our video and TV always outperformed. And you can see this came in here as a 4.8, I think it was, or something like that. 4.8 star, yeah. So this is part of how System 1 did there. I won't click on anything here, but you can see that it was a 4.8. For us, 4.8 for any media, including TV, would be knocking it out of the park. Like 4.8 would beat almost every Super Bowl ad in terms of TV, and certainly would beat most ads in Cannes and things like that as well. That our Village ad, which was the picture from us, that was like a 5-star and was probably our highest rated one. And then they have a spike rating. So the question, this is another measure to see whether it might have a short-term impact. And of course, you can see these don't always go the opposite directions. So it had really high levels of rating. And the other thing that the lottery care an awful about is in terms of brand recognition. And it's obvious from that particular radio ad why it would be so strong on brand fluency. But that's no mistake. That's part of the plan as well. And then again, you can just see the green here. It just this combines what's really good for all types of media is if you can improve levels of happiness and even surprise. I believe, Kieran, you have Peter Field coming on in a week or two's time, and he'll if you get him to talk about surprise and advertising, he's a big fan of why that can actually have this double whammy effect. And you can see that we had this jump in kind of happiness and surprise when this is the stage when she found out she won €1 million. And then the last one, I think my last chart is just another chart that just kind of explains how it does. The gray in the middle there is your average, and then the purple line is us. I think that's all the slides. What I would say, I'll just come off sharing. So I hope I didn't rush through that, but what I'm really happy about is that we got into we knew we had a plan, which was if we can make high quality radio and get a good indicator that it's high quality, it will stop us on this treadmill of making lower quality stuff and having to just keep putting. And it's a vicious cycle, because if you have lower quality advertising with lower amounts of media spend, then there's less likely chance that people are going to remember it anyway. And so it's really trying to get off that cycle. And so that's worked really well for us. And we played that campaign and actually saw really strong results post live. The indicators I showed you will give us a sense of whether it would work. And we can see it has had a really strong impact. And it's actually, I think it's back out playing at the moment again. And there's a lot of reasons why I think it works, and I'm happy to take questions on that. But I think what's most important for this particular, I guess, morning is that it's got the reach, which is really important. I think Rob's going to talk about the power of kind of sound and radio anyway, and allowed us to do those things and allowed us to play into the strategy, which is about getting this right mix of good quality stuff and then investing proper media against it. So we're incredibly happy, and it's a proof that we can do this if we change some of the approaches that we did and some of the assumptions that we had going in that are not necessarily true.
Many thanks, Paul. That is really fascinating, really, really interesting. And by the way, everybody, if you want to ask a question, I know there's a couple of questions going in the Q&A button, but if you want to type in a question, and then I can ask Paul. Before I go to the Q&A button, Paul, I just get the sense that you have a very specific briefing process for radio, where I feel often, having worked in the industry before, that often isn't the case. There isn't a very specific briefing process. And it sounds like, and I think we have a chat about this, you were very hands-on in the approach in terms of as the client in every aspect of producing that piece of work. Do you think your process or how you work is maybe different than other advertisers, other brand owners?
Well, I can't talk for others, but I'd say it's very unorthodox. I would say I'm a student of advertising and have studied it for a long time. And and so what I mean is I've studied what are the contexts and conditions that you need to make good advertising, and a lot of it's trial and error. But I would say I'm very unorthodox, and I think that I don't know if anyone on the call here is involved with the campaign, but I am very hands-on in the sense that I've got a very clear idea of the setting of how things should work. I never the ideas never come. I never want the ideas, that they're always coming from far greater minds than mine. But the briefing for all our media is very specific to what we're trying to do, and I would say that the knowledge base with the team we work with is really, really high. So within that particular radio ad, we are using a whole bunch of things. So it's like that actual radio ad is based on real insight and knowledge from this is actually how what actually happens. So this feels very much what would happen. We're also very clear that we're not trying to use metaphors. We're trying to go to the heart of the feeling, which is how people actually feel when they do win. We for example, we use the opening of a phone call at the very beginning to kind of pull you into that radio ad. So there's no music. It's just a phone call in the very beginning. The people on the call are not actors. They're actually, we went because we wanted to feel authentic. Well, I'm not always recommending that, but for this particular situation, and we gave it time to breathe. So we looked at 30 seconds, but you need time. If you rush it, you'll lose the quality. And we wanted enough time for it to breathe. We wanted the celebrations to because actually you'll see that jump in the emotion because people are pleased for others and they enjoy it. And what really is happening in this ad is where people go to is they go, oh God, wouldn't that be amazing? Wouldn't that moment when I get that call or when I ring the call center, wouldn't that just be like life-changing? Which is like our brand is essentially this idea that you could someday win, it could be you. And so it gets to the very heart of why people play, which is wouldn't just be amazing, maybe I should buy a lottery ticket today. And so we're very clear on all those things, and then there's other bits, like for example, we bring in our music at the end because we know that Mr. Blue Sky track has 75% spontaneous evoking of our brand. So there's just things like that which everybody around the table understands are here are ways to make sure we get attention, here are ways to make sure we don't have misattribution, here are ways to make sure that people are having some emotional attachment. And actually we bring in a bit of rational information at the end as well, which is kind of social proof, like there's been like 100 winners and things like that. So the design and the structure and kind of the building blocks all understood by everybody, and then you just got to figure things out, and some things you let go and some things you push further on. Yeah,
brilliant. That's really fantastic insight into earnings. I have a couple of questions from did you reduce your TV and other media spend as a result of this radio success? Was it additional to what you were already doing?
No, we diverted spend into it. Like I would say we spend a lot on radio anyway, Kieran. So the main advantage was that we probably over the space of a year would have spent $500,000 on media on this. So it's a serious investment. But we would spend that anyway. Like radio is a big channel for us because we have because it's got high reach. So it's all like we prioritize reach in a lot of our media decisions, and it's got local reach and and national reach. So it's got all these good things. And so what allowed us to really do is, instead of spreading your radio media across 8 or 10 ads in a year, you're putting it against one. So that's the power of focus on that for us.
Okay. And then another question: what are some of the mistakes you would have made previously in your radio ads? Said apart from not having a director.
Oh God, how long you got? Okay, so I think that the big challenge for radio ads is they're people think because you can make them for pretty cost effectively that you must. So there's not much thinking. Like, so for example, you really have to figure out how will you measure whether this has been good or not. Now, if you're doing a radio ad that says, look, there's a sale on tomorrow, come in and buy, then that's what it is. And you should try and give as much attention to do that and make sure that that's what it has to be. If you're trying to build an emotional connection, then you really have to think that through. So in the past, we had conflicting strategies. So we'd like, can we build emotion, but can we do it in 10 seconds or 15 seconds? And I'm not saying you can't, but it puts an awful lot of pressure to figure out how to do that. Or you don't invest in good performance and acting if that's what's needed, or you don't give the writers enough time to write it, so there's so a lot of it is what's like clarity up front on what the success looked like, and then treating it like the big difference for us is we said, we're going to give this the same care and attention and rigor and diligence that we do for things like TV and video, because we spend a lot on this and because we see the power of the reach of radio. And once you do that, there's like, okay, how, like, are we going to get a director in to direct the performance? Who's the best actor to do this particular piece? And we didn't do that in the past in radio. We kind of treated it in a very tactical, ad hoc fashion, I think.
I think that is such a key point. I really do. I think in terms of all brands are using the medium, but that kind of focus and effort that you have done, I think is hugely important. Just to say to everyone, now there's a couple of other questions have come in on the Q&A. What I'm going to do now is just, I'm going to actually introduce Ralph, and Ralph's going to go through his presentation, and then we come back at the end and the questions to both Paul and Ralph, and then we finish up bang on 10 o'clock. So listen, Paul, that was brilliant, really insightful, really interesting. If you stay around, we said that there is more questions in the Q&A. And now I'm going to welcome Ralph, and Ralph is coming in from Hong Kong. So many thanks. Not sure what time it is in Hong Kong, Ralph. I really appreciate it. And over to you now.
Thanks, Kieran, and thanks, Paul. That was great, and a lot of what I'm about to say you've touched on in your presentation as well, which is fantastic. I'm just going to share my everything. I'm going to get right into it just because we haven't got that much time, and I want to talk about love. And there's never too early to a bit of John Paul Young. So. Love is in the air. Me for your coffee. Love is the emotion that motivates like no other, and brands that motivate us, or the brands that we love, transcend their commercial role. They become part of our lives. And in this session, I want to talk about ways you can harness audio's unique powers to engender this long-term love for your brands. And you'll see from this picture that this is how I represent what radio is often used as guilty of. It's this kind of one-night fling medium where advertisers come on air so every once in a while, and all they want is action, right? That's what they demand. And they shout price and their product, and they sound a bit desperate, and they look a bit like the audio. They sound like the audio equivalent of a cheap suit and too much cologne, like this guy in this ad.
Far North Queensland Tint and Trailers bring you car tinting at low prices.
A little bit of Australia there for you, but of course, radio great medium for tactical campaigns, but good relationships always have the reciprocity. You know, brands need to balance the take with some of the give. And Les, you mentioned Peter Field before. Les Binet and Peter Field recommend that the best practice ratio for long-term brand building and short-term activation is 60-40 for B2C brands. And radio advertising breaks are dominated by those short-term tactics. Yet, of all the media available to us, radio is uniquely placed to help build the relationships, because advertisers get to be with listeners all day, every day, and in the most intimate one-on-one environment. Products can show up at the most relevant times of day, and then express how they can improve their lives. Ads on TV and online and social print and outdoor usually show other people interacting with the products, but in audio, we can make the listener the central character, and we can intrigue them and involve them. And this is an example. I'll play you an example of an ad that we did, I think demonstrates as well.
I'm going to do a little demonstration, and I want you to do it with me. Right. Take a deep breath, deep as you can, and hold it. Now, take another breath on top of it. You won't be able to take much in. Breathe out just that last bit. And breathe in again. Out. In. This is what breathing is like in the latter stages of emphysema. Sufferers describe it as feeling like you're suffocating 24 hours a day. Even if you only smoke a few low-tar cigarettes a day, If you ever get short of breath, it's almost certainly because you have emphysema in its early stages. Just about every smoker does. So now you know what lies ahead. Take a deep breath and call Quitline 131 848 131 848.
Now, that ad was part of a bigger campaign that, and the TV and digital component had been running for 2 weeks before the radio kicked in. When the radio kicked in, call rates to Quitline increased by 112%. And now, TV, digital, and outdoor helped create the awareness link between smoking and emphysema, but it was the radio that made it relevant to you, the listener. Suddenly, you had a sense of what it was like. It was the only ad in the entire campaign that made the audience the focus. And it's such a simple and powerful weapon in radio's arsenal. That's an approach that can be applied to every product category, even categories like automotive, where it's traditionally relied on visual marketing. You can use audio to take a broader message and make it really personally relevant to that audience, the way this ad did for Lexus.
The new generation of hybrid vehicles from Lexus, combining high performance with superior fuel economy. How? Each Lexus hybrid switches seamlessly between electric motors and a petrol engine to maximize performance in all conditions. Will you notice it switching from one to the other? Did you notice that I'm not the same person you heard speaking at the beginning of this commercial? We switched halfway through. Superior fuel efficiency, hand in hand with superior power. Some ideas evolve, some break through. High-performance hybrids from Lexus.
So a nice example of just involving the listener, that penny drop moment where you went, it was similar to what Paul was talking about, that moment of surprise in the ad where you're actively involved and you hear something that makes you feel something. And that ad was full of emotion, full of information about the car, yet we still made room for the listener to involve them and intrigue them. And that is one of audio's superpowers. And with a little extra bit of generosity in your creative, it'll help build love and build brand loyalty. And we all know how important brand loyalty is. Loads of stats and studies to show why loyalty is important. It costs 6 times more to attract a new customer than it does to keep an existing one. 5% increase in customer retention can boost profits up to 95%. And we can do that with advertising that taps into the listener's emotions, getting them in the feels, you know. There's an ad that we did that demonstrates this for HBF. So HBF is a large health insurance provider in Australia. And I want you to listen to this ad. It's a longer ad, but listen to the generosity that we demonstrated in this ad in terms of ratio for the listener and the story versus the brand.
When you're a mother, the sound you hear most often could only be described as chaos. It's with you in the house, follows you in the car. It seems to be waiting for you wherever you go. Sometimes the chaos is even louder in those places. And then, of course, it jumps back in the car to ride home with you. And it always seems to beat you to the door. But every mother knows the sound of chaos is actually a good sound. It's when you hear nothing that you worry. Your health is all that matters. HBF.
Sorry, and I just talked all over the only time the brand was mentioned at the end. The health is all that matters. HBF was how it finished. And that 45-second ad, the brand was only mentioned once in the last 4 seconds, but the campaign that ad was part of helped reduce churn by over 25% for the brand. And instead of selling the details of the policies, it used the ads to communicate the commitment from them as a health insurance company, their commitment to keep you healthy, which really at the end of the day is all that matters. And because 75% of consumers say that they make buying decisions based on their emotions, if you can find a way to connect with your audience emotionally, you're more than halfway toward converting them to loyal customers who recommend your brand. And I know seems really blatantly obvious, but when you turn on the radio and you listen to the number of ads that actually do that versus the times that we've been told to do this as marketers or experts, there's a big disconnect. So if you can find a way to do that and tug at the heartstrings, then you're creating these loyal customers, and that means balancing the give and the take in your creative, as I mentioned before, leaving room in your ad to entertain and intrigue the listener, give them vivid pictures to imagine, and believable characters, which is vitally important. Paul touched on that, and I'll go into a little more detail about the characters within our advertising as well. This next ad for Scott Tourism was a nice story, a very believable character, and it just had a warmth to it, in a category that has been associated with just beautiful imagery and letting the pictures do all the talking. But this was a way to go deeper and talk about this person's trip and experience in a different way.
I've got a pine cone that's been x-rayed in 3 continents. It sits in my briefcase, so it spends a lot of time in airports. I found this pine cone last autumn, when Sarah and I were in the Mull of Kintyre. When I found it, I wasn't wearing a suit. My mobile phone was switched off, and I wasn't worrying about work. I wasn't worrying about anything. So, I don't mind the funny looks from airport security staff, because that pine cone reminds me there's more to life than meetings.
Scotland. It stays with you.
So just taking again that approach of not necessarily having high repetition, but high impact. So, and certain briefs you can do this on, certain briefs call for a different ratio. But in this case, you're selling a feeling, you're selling a memory of what it's going to be like to visit a place like Scotland. And that time that we took to actually tell that story and let the music breathe, what drew the listener in and made them become part of it, part of the story. We're going to talk a bit about music here. Now, first, a shameless plug. My son Rule's playing, there's a picture of him playing at the Academy in Dublin. He's going to be in Dublin this month playing at the 3 Olympia Theatre, so get a ticket now. But the reason I talk about him is not just so you buy a ticket and he finally leaves home. I've seen firsthand the effect of music on his fans. You know, they hear the songs and they close their eyes and they're just totally lost in the song. You know, they look at their friends, they're singing along, and music has this power to just activate those limbic systems and which are the areas involved in processing emotions and memories. And no visual stimulus that affects us quite as strongly. And we all have those songs that do that to us. And not only can radio advertisers play ads in amongst those songs, you know, with the songs that get the listeners right in the limbics, their ads can actually include music within them, as Paul's example did with Mr. Blue Sky. We recently made an ad for an internet service provider called Belong, which demonstrates this. This company is a carbon neutral internet service, and so they love the planet as much as they love the internet. And we wrote a song that celebrates the internet and celebrating all the wonderful wormholes that you can explore, and or that their unlimited data helps you access. And this ad ran for the entire ad break. So on radio stations across Australia, and then after 2 weeks, the shortened version was used to up the frequency. I'll play you the ad, which is actually it was ended up on YouTube, and it was you know, the lyrics there. But this ad got requests to the radio stations for like who is this who, because it appeared like a song on a radio station.
Belong Internet presents a love song.
Don't recall when I first turned you on, but I know we connected. Yeah, sometimes folks might treat you wrong and you're feeling rejected. Got a history I'll never wipe, so I wrote a song to set things right. 'Cause I'm grateful to belong in your wide world of unlimited da-da-da. You fill me up with useful facts like octopus don't fight. Before we met I hated cats, and I just thought you should know you're my wonderful, whimsical, weirdly irresistible wormhole. Watching 6 hours of old Oscar speeches, finding a site that sells medical leeches, chatting on a forum about stuff that tastes like blue, learning how to turn spinach into pasta, shooting aliens with some kid in Alaska, reading how the air gets clean with whale poo. In your unlimited da-da-da, you fill my phone with apps and memes. Now I Espanol habla. I never knew that goats could sing, and I just thought you should know you're my wonderful, whimsical, weirdly irresistible. And if everyone switched ISPs, the folks who paid for me to sing could help tackle this climate thing, so I can stay in love with my wormhole.
Yeah, it feels good to belong. Carbon neutral internet.
You're my wormhole.
So, you know, a lot of writing goes into that, a lot of production, a lot of composition, and you end up with an ad that stands repeat listening. People start requesting. That can be shortened. It's used on their whole system. It's used in other content. But it's a very generous ad that makes the brand feel like it's in it for good. And we know that music is a powerful way to elicit those emotions. So using that vehicle as a way to do it and tell their message was perfectly relevant there. We do that. You know, we're writing original compositions and creating brand anthems and audio logos. And this isn't something. Oh, well, it's not really new. I mean, McDonald's have been doing it for decades. And the proven ROI with studies like Ipsos, The Power of You, showing that advertising content featuring a sonic brand asset, like an audio logo or a brand anthem, distinctive brand voice, is 8 times as likely to be effective. But you do need experience to do this, sonic branding expertise, and in your part of the world, I'd recommend an agency, Massive Music, based in London. The massive experience. They've just done the sonic branding for TikTok, which is one of the fastest to establish, overtaken Intel within like 2 months in terms of recognition. And when you do have one of those sonic branding assets, radio advertising is probably one of the most effective, cost-effective ways to help establish it. It leads into trust, and the one advantage that we have in audio is in the area of trust. Humans trust their ears more than their eyes. It's why the way a brand sounds is so vitally important, just because our cave-dwelling ancestors relied on sound to give them the most sort of accurate picture of their surroundings. And sense changes in sound in less than a millionth of a second. And it's why our ears serve as these awesome, accurate bullshit detectors. Evaluate the tone and tempo and inflection of someone's voice to judge their authenticity. And that currency of authenticity has never been more valuable, particularly for the current generation. React positively to authenticity. They spot a fake a mile off, and they're exposed to so much of that trickery and fakery out there that by giving them something authentic, they really respond to it. This case study, or this campaign, I'm going to play you an example for tap into this authenticity. It's for a brand called Skinny Mobile, and the marketing platform was all about saving money, and they brought it to life in a very entertaining way. I'll just play you a snippet of this case study.
Please record your Skinny radio ad after the beep.
Up around town,
You want to be in an ad? It is as simple as calling a number.
You phone this number and you then read the script that's on the poster to the voicemail.
To keep prices low, Skinny has placed this radio script near the theatre, on a central city billboard, on the front page of a newspaper, and the hopes that someone like me will call the number provided. Record it on their mobile for free.
You may think I'm a fool for giving away my voice like this, but who cares? I'm on the radio. Get the Skinny.
If you'd told me a week ago I'd be standing in a dimly lit car park recording a radio ad for a telco on my mobile and not getting paid for it, I would have said you were crazy, but not as crazy as Skinny's low prices.
I might be in a questionable part of town, making questionable decisions, but there's no questioning Skinny's great prices and incredible mobile network.
Well, the campaign was huge success for them. That goes into the stats, and the social engagement was huge. The new policies, contracts that they were selling went through the roof for them. And if you want your brand to be loved, it must be trusted. For it to be trusted, it needs to be authentic. And if your ears are the best bullshit detectors, then the more relatable your brand sounds, and by that I mean sort of conversational tone and jargon-free language, and the use of actors as opposed to the voiceover voices, the more they'll be loved. And just on that, actors to bring your words to life, as opposed to the voiceover voices, those typical advertising people. They just simply make your words audible, and there's a huge difference. An actor will, even on a product with lots of information, an actor will avoid the salesy tone and find a way of making it real. We work with a company called Macquarie Bank in Australia. 4 years ago, they came to us wanting to test audio. Macquarie name was associated with corporate banking only, so the brand was a bit cold and not particularly well loved. So we needed to shift perceptions of the brand, and the framework we created and the actor cast has remained consistent for 4 years, and they've enjoyed huge growth to the extent where they don't let me talk about this case in Australia because they don't want their competitors to know how well it's working. And their investment in radio and their investment in audio and podcast and streaming has also increased year on year, and with the same framework and the same approach. Here's a couple of examples from that campaign.
Drop it, drop.
This is Liv.
G'day.
Steady career, decent salary. So her good old bank offered her one of their good old home loans.
Yeah, good old them, eh?
Which is why she called Macquarie Bank, who specialise in rewarding those who are great with their money with even greater home loans. Low fees, great rates and flexible ways to repay faster. You deserve better than good old. So search Macquarie Home Loans and see how easy it is to say.
I bank with Macquarie.
Macquarie Bank Australian Credit Licence too. Meet the Barneses.
Hi.
G'day.
Never missed a home loan payment, needed a bigger house, so their usual bank gave them the usual runaround.
The usual story.
Right.
Which is why they called Macquarie Bank, who specialise in rewarding those who are great with their money with even greater home loans, low fees, great rates and flexible ways to repay faster. When the usual isn't good enough, search Macquarie Home Loans and see how easy it is to say,
Yeah, we bank with Macquarie.
Macquarie Bank Australian Credit Licence.
So those ads are encoding these long-term memories. So the 80% of people who are not in market for a home loan at any given time will remember that ad and will remember it when it is time, when they do come to market. So in summary, you need to challenge your agency to create long-term creative platforms, ones listeners recognize and become familiar with and enjoy. Involve the listener, make room for them in the ad, make them the central part of the idea even. Entertain, tap into the listener's emotions, build trust with authentic sounding voices. And if your creative does all of that, then radio advertising will not only generate those short-term results that you associate it with, but it'll also generate the long-term brand response. But best of all, the most important thing, listeners will love you for it. So I hope that was useful. There's one more ad which I'll save. I'll keep in the back pocket just in case we have time for it, but I'm happy to take any questions now if that's. Look, you know what? I'm just going to play it. I'm going to play the question. I'm going to play the ad to finish off with because it's one of my favorites, and please feel free to pop any questions in the chat.
Okay, Bradley, tell the class about your holidays.
Yeah, it was really good. My dad built us a new
kitchen. It's got wooden bench tops and some stupid self-closing drawers. There was a dishwasher that was a real and even a breakfast bar. Mum thought Dad was a massive.
Get a kitchen installed without teaching your kids new words. Visit ikea.com.au. We can plan, deliver and install the whole thing for you.
There you go. Sorry to end on a high or a low, depending on how you how you're wired. But thanks for that, and hopefully that was useful to you all.
Many thanks. Really appreciate that. The interesting insights and learnings in that presentation. Just one quick question first. What do you think is the blockage for brand owners who maybe don't do the things you are recommending in the presentation? When you show that early example of the cheap suit or whatever, and you're saying lots of, audio ads go down that vein. Why do you think that happens? What's the blockage? Well, what things do people need to do differently to kind of?
Well, it goes to some of the points Paul was making, but I often think the wrong people are making the ads, and often it's people with lack the experience to do it well. You need this combination of marketing strategy, experience writing for the spoken word, experience in directing and bringing it to life. And often the agencies who don't make much money on the radio creative will allocate the junior creatives to do it. It's just a fact of life. It's a business decision, and so that's a big part of the what causes the end result. I mean, we've had clients like another ANZ. They had been recommended radio for like 2 years running by their media agency, but the campaigns always got knocked back by their brand team. They just didn't feel like they lived up to the benchmark that they had as a brand. Another factor is lack of case studies that brands can draw on and other brands to demonstrate it being done well. And sometimes marketers just being a bit greedy about what they want to put in the brief and not allowing room to do one thing well. If you have more than one message, you make more than one ad. It's pretty simple. So I think a lot of it is down to the resources and just a bit of maybe a lack of understanding on the potential of how you could use it.
Very good. Just looking at chat, actually, there was one question for you, Paul. Earlier, was talking about is bear with me now. Do you differentiate between FM and digital audio in your campaigns?
I think again, it comes back to context. So are we talking about, like, you take a podcast, do we think people are listening to it while they're walking or doing something else? Do we what's the length of time? I'm kind of interested in some of the podcasts because that I see in the US, because you can probably do longer format ads that are quite interruptive because people are less likely maybe to switch and things like that as well, or they're deeply listening to it. We're interested in them all. I think the main difference for us, for our brand, is the amount of reach and what's the level of cost and targeting and things like that. So we keep an eye on ones that are growing in reach, and just try and understand. Like, we work with Core and Starcom, and they're really good when it comes to understanding the context of each format and then what's the strategy for that. So I think we think about, when it comes to video, we think of screen size as the most important element and where it might be. And when it comes to audio, we think about, well, where are people listening to this and how are they listening to it?
And have you ever used dynamic at all in terms of, because obviously you've different, you could have different context in terms of location or rollover values. Have you ever experimented with that from slightly more personalization, even though it's still a wide reach?
In audio?
Yeah.
Not really. Like, we have tried it we've tried it certainly we would do local radio campaigns that are, now it's not dynamic, but we would, for example, if there was a winner in Kilkenny, you might do local radio there, and that works quite well. We haven't done dynamic stuff like that. It's not that we wouldn't. I just think there's we don't want to get it wrong. We don't want to make mistakes. It's really important that we don't give the wrong information. So the more complexity that you bring into anything, the more risk there is of something going wrong. We will certainly, as it becomes easier. We did a very kind of interactive test on digital out of home there at the beginning of the year, and that worked quite well in terms of its execution and things like that. So yeah, we will definitely try things. But for us, there is just getting the right combination of complexity and reach and things like that.
Okay. And Ralph, a question. Sorry, go ahead, Ralph.
I was just going to say, just off the back of that, sometimes because you can personalize, there's this new interesting technology and way that we utilize it. I think that dynamic and personalization is best served to just improve targeting and making sure that you absolutely hit the most relevant people at the most relevant time. But often it can be used to just fill the ad with things that aren't necessary to talk about. It's tempting because you can to reference the day of the week and maybe what the weather's doing, but actually is it better using the ad to just build desire and not fill it with a lot of information that the listener already is aware of? So that's a watch out, really, just in terms of the technology.
Just one other question for you on the chat, Ralph. It's a similar question to Paul. What would you see are the mistakes people make, the general mistakes people make when they're creating audio content?
Well, it's again similar to what Paul was saying. You've got to treat it seriously. Start the process early, so you're not writing and casting with days before going into the studio, or worse, going to the studio a couple of days before being there. You don't need to do it that late. I mean, generally, when you're booking, when your radio campaign is, they know you have a radio campaign coming up. Start the process early. Do a pre-production meeting. Use a director, and just treat it seriously, because it's not, you can't do good stuff quickly and cheaply necessarily. Maybe you can do it cheaply if there's enough time, but you need the opportunity to cast outside of the usual net, finding ownable, interesting voices. You need time to get the people who are making it to cross it, to rewrite it, to have a pre-production meeting where someone's reading in the time that it's supposed to take, so you're not actually going into the studio with a 35-second script when you've got a 30-second ad. All those things just have a massive impact on the end result. So I think the biggest pitfall is that people aren't taking it seriously enough or giving it the time it needs to do well.
Okay, listen, I really appreciate that. And we are just bang on 10 o'clock now. So I really want to thank Ralph and Paul. Really appreciate your time today. It was really, really interesting. Very clear insights. I think there's a very clear lesson from the last hour in terms of what to do, in terms of leverage the power of sound. So I really appreciate your time very much. And just one little last plug, and Paul mentioned earlier, Peterfield is presenting. The next event is an in-person event, so it's in the Round Room at the Mansion House on the 5th of October. Peterfield will be presenting some new data on general advertising effectiveness, but specifically also focusing on audio. And there'll be other research about consumers' relationship with different audio platforms. That's research Radio Centre Ireland's commissioned, and that will be released on the 5th of October as well. Invites will be going out over the next couple of days, so hope to see many of you there. So again, Paul and Ralph, I really appreciate your time. Many thanks, and thank you everybody for attending, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Kieran.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Thanks, Kieran. Paul. Bye, everyone.
Bye.